Hi, I'm Michelle McVitie, and I'm Mom the Manager. I am a child life specialist and a family and corporate consultant. I'm an author and the host of my own TV show.
Hey, I'm Nikki Scarfone, and I am an early years child development support. And I typically work in classrooms throughout the school year. And I usually support kids who are having difficulties with kind of emotions and behaviors.
Fantastic. And you also have a background in autism support as well.
I
And
do.
yeah,
I used to work at Shed Oak Hospital with the Autism Intervention Program, which is now housed out of Ron Joyce, prior to coming into a work in classrooms.
yeah, fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about behaviors, understanding what is underneath the behavior, and then giving parents some insight on why our kids act the way that they do and what can we do about it. And then the last piece I'd like to talk about is how do we get them to do things for us at home and then transfer those skills to daycare or to school or to going to a play date and actually being invited to come back, right? Because that's what we want is we want our kids to be able to transfer these skills, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So why the aggression? I think that everywhere I go, I am constantly, if I'm asked any question, it's why is my kid aggressive? Are they aggressive all the time? I tell them to stop and they keep doing it. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably kind of the biggest portion of my role that I find when I'm out working with educators and parents, and that's kind of one of the biggest things that sticks out because I think it's one of the hardest things to deal
Yes.
with.
Yeah. So if you were to give a quick answer, why are they being aggressive? I mean,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts? And I'll share some of mine as well.
sure. So I think the biggest thing that we see or when we see this is when children feel that they're kind of cornered
Mhm.
or they're kind of stuck somewhere or they're being sort of backed into a corner. And they're maybe not necessarily understanding what the expectation is that's being placed on them. What am I being asked to do? Can I do it? They might have a fear that they can't do it. And so just automatically they kind of maybe lash out or feel those kind of big moments, those big emotions. And I think basically what I'm referring to is that flight, fight, or freeze mode.
Mhm.
And I find that when kids are aggressive, it's because they're in that fight mode. They want to get out of this, get away from this expectation. They don't know what it is or how to communicate that they don't understand what it is. And so they just get in that fight mode.
Yes, absolutely. And usually what happens is like you have an emotion and anger is to stop something, like I want
Yeah,
this to stop, or I'm trying to set boundaries here. They just don't
yeah.
do it in a nice way. And if it's happening on a regular basis, it's because it's working for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a child screaming in the candy aisle, it's because eventually it's like, okay, fine, I'll give you the candy,
Yeah.
right?
It's a
If they
learned
learn,
behavior. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. But we want it to stop, right? So parents are jumping into fix or, just let them do what they want so they won't have the meltdown. And then we teach the child this behavior is working for you. And then on top of that, there's no alternative. So it's
Mhm.
actually okay to be angry. It's not okay to kick your sister in the face, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. The other piece too is do you feel like these children that are aggressive are quickly labeled and no one really looks at their side of things?
Yes.
Mhm.
So to kind of go with that, one of the things that I always like to point out to people is every behavior has a trigger or a reason.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
always, always, always a reason for
Yeah.
why a child is either being aggressive or they're having a tantrum or a meltdown. That reason, we might be able to see it and we might not be able to.
Mhm.
It's a hidden thing sometimes. And I think that's kind of where we get lost in trying to cope with that with kids.
Yes.
Um, and like you said, just kind of that focusing on more kind of those behaviors that are positive and labeling those behaviors that are positive. That's going to reinforce and make that child want to do those behaviors more. rather than you pointing out those negative, aggressive behaviors.
Mhm. And I think that's tip number one. And I think that's a great tip is pay attention to what you want to see more of. Because
Mm,
if they're sitting there quietly, or they've let their sister go first, or they've used their words instead of their hands, well, we start thinking, well, they should be doing this, or
yes,
finally they're doing this, right?
yeah,
And then we keep doing that should, they should be, but they're not. And the
yeah,
more that we label, and we have to be specific. I really like that you use your words. Or maybe they're screaming it, and we're focusing more on the fact that they're screaming, but they used to throw their shoe across the room. So, it's altering our expectations,
mhm,
not lowering them, and then being really vocal with, I really like this. I like that you've done this, and acknowledge the effort. We're so focused on the end result, or in the moment, why are you acting this way? Why? I have no idea. You gave me
mhm,
a purple cup.
yeah,
I wanted the blue cup. I'm wearing scratchy pants. This classroom or this house is chaos. You've been screaming all day. I didn't have a good sleep. And I have math first thing when I get to school, or I have hockey after school and I hate hockey, but my dad is insisting that I go.
yeah,
And they're freaking out over the purple cup. It's
yeah,
not about the cup,
yeah,
right? But that's a lot of
yeah,
work to go backwards to be like, what is this
yes.
about? Right?
And I talk with educators a lot about that. Sometimes they'll say when I come into a classroom, so and so came in this morning and they were just already, in a bad mood and grumpy, and it just the whole day was just thrown off immediately. And I remind them that we don't know what happened at home that the night before or the week before. That something happened this morning and that either triggered or brought back a reminder. Something happened to remind that child of something, and that has just kind of set them in that motion with those big emotions. And
Yeah.
today is the day that they're going to kind of maybe use their hands and their feet more often than their words because of all of those things. It's like a domino effect.
Absolutely. And I think that's the piece too that we want to remember is, what is that behavior triggering in you? Right?
Yeah,
So even as a parent, whether you're dealing with a 15-year-old or a 3-year-old, you wake them up in the morning, I don't want to. I don't want to do this. I don't, and we just think, oh, here we go.
yeah,
Just get up. I don't want to go to work either. I don't want to do this. And then how do we react? I don't want to deal with a fight. Get up. I don't
right.
care what your problem is. This has to be done. Your sister got up. And this is what that child is dealt with.
Mhm, mhm,
But if we can look at it as, this child comes in, he's having a hard time. And then what do I deal with them? Great. Here we go. Or I'm actually going to avoid that child because I don't want to deal with it. But maybe that child actually needed a, hey buddy, how you doing today?
mhm,
Or I'm noticing you're a little bit sad, and label some of their emotion. What is the plan? Do they have a little quiet zone they can go to? Can you give them a note to go and give it to the teacher next door? It could be an empty envelope, but it's giving them a few minutes to come down a little bit. Because what do we want? We want compassion and we want understanding. And when they're little, they don't talk about it so much, but I hear that more from the older kids, where it's like, everybody just assumes I'm a terrier. Everybody just assumes I'm going to, do something bad. So you know
yeah,
what? You want to label me like that? I will do that then, because
yes,
this is what you expect from me. But it's really tough when you're, a teacher, or when you are a parent, and it's like, I don't want to deal with this, right?
mhm,
But without saying this in a mean way, it's not about you. This is a
yeah,
little person,
yeah.
and they need our support, right?
So someone that I follow a lot and a lot of my work kind of goes with is the work of Stuart Shanker, who
Hmm.
works on in self-regulation.
Yes.
And he has this one quote that I just absolutely love. And it is, there's no such thing as a bad child.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we really have to remember because, again, just like what you said, there's a reason for why this child is acting that way. And exactly like what you said, when you were labeled as a bad kid, or, oh, I know that that kid's going to react this way in this situation automatically, and not giving them that chance, then exactly, they're just going to act out because that's what they're used to. And that's what they've kind of learned as the behavior that they're going to get a response to.
Absolutely. And I think that's the piece is, what what are they struggling with? What's going on? They're not doing it on purpose. Children want to do well. They just don't
Yeah.
have the tools to deal with what they're dealing with. And even when we give them those tools, it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be like,
Yeah.
oh, I remember that this is what I'm supposed to do, or we haven't given them an opportunity to practice, right? If you drive somewhere, the first time it might be hard, and it's like, oh, actually, I'm going to get off at this cutoff instead, or you know what, it took me an extra 15 minutes because I'm driving in rush hour, I'm going to have to leave. We kind of do that stuff, and then we give each other or give ourselves some time to practice. But with our kids, especially with bad behavior, we're
Yeah.
walking on eggshells. We're making sure everything is okay. We're not going to go to the indoor playground. We're not going to have too many friends over. We're not going to do this. We're going to let them go first and win all the games because I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
Are you teaching them the tools?
Right, exactly.
Right?
And just you mentioning about, kind of walking on eggshells. And one of the other big things that I remind educators and parents is that kids are just looking for that sense of belonging and that security.
Right.
And we as educators, as parents, need to foster that. And it's really, really important to build a positive relationship with a child. So, that's from the get-go. As a parent, you're doing it right away as your infant is born, and you're continuing it on, throughout their life. As
Yeah.
an educator, this child's coming in September into your classroom, and that's kind of got to be that number one thing, is building that relationship so that that child trusts you. So when they do have those outbursts or meltdowns, or times when they feel like everything is just weighted on top of them, that they know that they have that trusting adult to just go to and either let out a scream or hit something or cry, or they have a safe place to let out that big emotion.
Absolutely. And I think the other piece too is that what I hear a lot of, they're doing it for attention.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
instead, it's changing your mindset that they're not doing things to make you angry. They don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, how many times can I make my mom mad?
Yeah.
you know,
Ruin their lives today.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So and sometimes they learn that this is the only way I'm actually going to get them to sit with me or to do stuff is when I do this bad behavior, right? But it's changing your mindset as the adult or the teacher or caregiver or whoever to say they're not doing this on purpose. There is a message here. And instead of they're doing this for attention, they're actually doing this for attachment. They're trying
Yes.
to attach with
Wow.
you. They
Yeah.
just don't know how to do it. They're not going to say, hey, mom, you know what? You're busy running around. I'd love for you to sit down and have breakfast with me because I'm not going to see you all day. No, they're going to throw their milk
Yeah.
around. They're
Yeah.
going to do something. And then the
Yeah.
parent is like, okay, fine. You know what? You're going to be like this. I'm going to sit with you. And it's like a
Yeah.
miserable
Yeah.
time. And you leave
Yeah.
the house sweating and miserable. And that child, a lot of these kids that deal with behavior are sensitive. So they
Yeah.
take that on. And that's how their kind of day
Mhm.
continues on with that heaviness. I was just trying to connect with you. I don't know how to
Exactly.
do it in a
Yeah.
good way. And then this is how we've kind of started our day,
Yeah.
right?
And just to go with that, to us, what bothers us or what stresses us out as adults obviously can be very different from a child. And with children, your example of the purple cup,
Yeah,
it could seem like it's just this little tiny, so simple thing to us, but to them, it's their whole. It could ruin their whole day. It just weighs on them, and it can just have such a big stress. And just making sure that you're, when you're sitting with them for those few minutes, that you ensure that you're like validate those emotions and those feelings that they're having. Those are real things. And again, it might seem silly or small to us, but to them it's a big deal. And just validating that, oh, I can see that you're really angry right now. How does that make your body feel? How does it feel inside? I can see that your face is scrunched and your mouth is down and your face is red, and and talking that out with them, and just really validating, I see that you're upset, or I see that you're frustrated.
absolutely. And I think validation is a really important thing. It's something that you can't fake, right? So if you're
Mm,
telling somebody to validate that and you're like, yeah, he can get over it. It's only a purple cup.
yeah.
How are you supposed to validate that? It's not going to work. And children
Right.
can see through that.
Yeah.
Teenagers can see through that. Your partner can see through that, that it's like, oh, yeah, that must be really hard for you. Yeah, doing your job is really hard. Like it's not going to work. So you have to find that little kernel of truth in that I don't get it. I don't get why the purple cup is better than the blue cup. Like it's
Right.
the same thing to me, and you want problems, kid, I'm going to give you problems, right?
Hmm.
But they're coming from a different point of view. Their brains are under construction until 25, and then we just get into rationale. Why,
Yeah.
why? It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. And it's like, you don't think this is an issue, so I'm either going to shut down, or I'm throwing that cup across the room and I'm getting you to understand this is an issue. And then
Absolutely.
what are we focused on? The behavior instead of
Yeah.
what actually happened underneath.
Why the
Why?
behavior happened. Yeah.
Why?
Why?
You know,
There's
and that
always a
question,
reason.
and and the question is the worst. Asking why
Yeah.
is a conversation blocker. They
Yeah.
do not get it. Even a 15-year-old sometimes doesn't get
Yeah.
it, or a 10-year-old doesn't get it, right? And also, when you say, why did you act that way? That's shaming a child.
Yeah.
And shame
Yeah.
is an emotion that wants to stay hidden. So it's like, I don't care. Or they shut down even more. And then you want to sit down and have a conversation about, how do we make this better? Let's create a little quiet zone or a zen zone for you in the house, so you can go there when your emotions start bubbling up. No, I'm not sitting with you to do anything. No way. So that's the kind of stuff that I think is really helpful, and it's hard work. Um, but
Yeah, it's definitely not easy to get your, for us as humans, it's just
yeah,
easier for us to do what's quicker, and often that's the thing, is our minds just go to that, no, you're not doing that, or no, or it's harder to train your brain to go in that other way of you know telling
negative.
your child the behavior you want to see instead of the behavior
Yes,
you don't want to see. But again,
absolutely.
like you said, with practice and being able to work with your child on saying, like, oh, we keep our feet on the floor instead of, get down off the wall,
Yes.
climbing. It's, you're just trying to train your brain again to just label behavior you want to see rather than the behaviors you don't want to see.
Absolutely. And what's the message that you're giving your child when you're like, you know better, stop doing that, but stop screaming. You don't scream.
Yeah.
You don't scream. And it's like, you're
Yeah.
screaming all the time. And
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
have those conversations with your
Yeah.
kids to say, what's going on, buddy? I'm noticing mornings are really tough, or getting to you to school is really hard. We really need to hear them. But sometimes they will say to you, like, you scream all the time. Why is it okay for you? And then we get defensive, and it's like, who do you think you are? I'm the adult.
Mm.
I put food on the table. You don't tell me. Now you've just lost that opportunity to
Exactly. Yeah.
build that connection with your child and
Yeah.
really figure out what's underneath, right?
And to go with that, I think it's really important to start to recognize the signs of when your child is getting, stressed, or um you know they're maybe not understanding certain expectations, or we have to try and be proactive, and try and get to the root of a behavior, or get to the root of something before the big blowout, because then again, you start to spin, because they're upset, you're upset, and it just kind of grows into this much bigger thing sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think getting down to the nitty gritties is sometimes difficult. Like, so if I say to a parent, if they say, well, mornings are really tough, getting them out of the door is really tough. So getting them out of bed is really tough. Oh, no, no, no. A shower? Oh, no, they do that the night before. Okay. So you're saying the whole morning is tough. What really is it? It's
Exactly.
actually,
Yeah.
they take forever to eat. Yeah, but I let them watch TV while they're eating, or I let them watch TV to get started with their day, and then I expect them to do all the other stuff. So you've just given them the reward first, and then you're going to say, no, that's not happening anymore. Well, you've kind of given a
Yeah.
mixed message, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so really drilling it down, like I've created a worksheet, things that bug me, right? So they can write inside the little bugs. It bugs me that there's so much screaming in the house. It
Yeah.
bugs me that at recess time, no one wants to play with me. And it might take a little bit of time, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you feel you're waking up to a lot of screaming and yelling and rushing in the morning, and you're more of a quiet child, and then you go to school and no one really wants to play with you, right?
Yeah.
Then what is my motivator for going to school? What's my motivator for wanting to hang out with my family when no one really wants to be around me? I'd rather just be up in my room or play on my video games,
Yeah.
right?
And again, as humans, and I work with kind of the younger spectrum of kids, but at the same time, we all just crave just social attention
Yeah.
and a bond with somebody. And I see a lot, especially in the classrooms with some of the kids that I work with, that a lot of the time it's that socialization. They just don't know how to go over and start playing with friends that they want to play with. They don't know how to say, can I have a turn with that? Can I play with that? For them, it's easier to just kind of throw themselves in there and grab a toy from somebody. And again, we have to look at our automatic response is, oh, you're done there. You're not playing there. You took a toy, you're not sharing. They had that first. When really we have to really unpack that and look that child probably just wants to go over and play with those kids and just doesn't
Yeah,
have the skills.
absolutely. And it's all about connection. I think that's what we've talked
Yeah.
about, is really connecting with the child, understanding they're not doing this on purpose. So
Yeah.
trying to figure out what those things are, paying attention to their body talk, like they're, that they look stressed or they're not sleeping well or they're agitated more often, and doing a little bit of that digging or trying to think of what the issue is as the adult, and not expecting a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or sometimes even a 14-year-old to
Yeah.
really know, I really don't understand why I'm acting this way, but I have this emotion and then I act out, right?
Yeah.
So teaching them what to do with that emotion. And it's a lot of practicing, not in the moment, right? If they're having a meltdown, it's not the time to be like, let's
No.
pull out some bubbles.
No.
Let's try this. What are those things that are going to feel good? And some days they're going to have good days, and some days they're not going to have great
Yeah.
days. And that's normal, but we get frustrated. It's like, this worked for 2 days. Now it's
Yeah.
not working. I'm going to throw this out the window.
Yeah.
No, it's just normal,
Yeah.
right?
And we know, some of the strategies that we implement, in the classroom or in homes, they take a while. We have to, keep working on them for, at least a few weeks to really get them kind of innate in our routine and have that routine response when something happens, right? And we
Absolutely.
need to. It's exactly like you said. We can't try it once and be like, well, that doesn't work. We really do have to kind of put the work into these things, which is hard because people are working, kids are typically in school, there's other activities going on after school, lives are busy.
Mhm.
But again, just kind of making this one of those important things, and just getting to know your child and really understanding that these are things that we have to practice.
Absolutely. And I think that's the number one thing. Before you do anything, you have to see this as a priority. If this is something that you think, well, I should be doing it, or the teacher told me there's an issue, he's fine with me at home. But at home, he gets his purple cup and he gets to go first and he gets a. So, you know what? There's no motivator for me to do this. I just give him what he wants and there's no screaming. So
Yeah.
we'll just let them deal with it somewhere else, right? If it's not a motivator for
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
then there's no sense. There's no sense doing any kind of routine, doing any of this stuff. And I don't mean this in a negative way. It's like wanting to work out or wanting to do a marathon, and a week before you're like, oh, shoot, I better start running. It's not a priority for you, right? And then it's not going to go well. And you're going to say, see, I told you I'm not a marathon runner. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I think that's a great start to understanding behavior, really looking at the child, knowing that their brain is under construction until 25. And it's up to us as the adults to do some of that proactive approach instead of trying to fight fires.
Yeah.
And knowing that they're going to have good days and bad days, but paying attention to those really good things that they're doing and saying, I like that you did this.
Absolutely.
This is fantastic. And including them in some of those conversations. Is there anything else that, before we wrap up, that you want that message to, whether you're a teacher or a parent, what do you want to let them know about your child and their behavior?
So I just think a couple just really even just simple things that you can kind of start to do even today is, if you're putting an expectation on your child and you want them to do something, just give them a choice. Give them a choice of two things. Do you want to do this or do you want to do this? And even that can just help them, because that gives you a little bit of control as the adult in the situation, but it also gives them a little bit of control to
Yes.
decide which thing they want to do.
Yes.
And just be consistent and follow through with expectations. And you know, if a child knows that something, what the clear, cut and dry expectation is, then most of the time they'll, they might still not like it, but you might not see those kind of big huge emotions come out necessarily. And again, with time and practice. But I think definitely giving choice and being consistent would be kind of the biggest things to remember when dealing with those kind of big emotions.
Absolutely. All great tips. And I hope that this is going to be helpful for the people watching. And we wish you lots of luck. You need lots of patience. But like you said, consistency, understanding, they're just little and they need that repetition and lots of patience. So thanks again. And I hope this was helpful to everybody. Take care.